Is Bitcoin about to make a major move? Let's talk about it. So, hey everyone, welcome back to Upside Down Data. Today I want to talk about whether or not the stage might be set for Bitcoin to make a notable move out of this relatively boring range that it's been in. So Bitcoin rallied up in late June and then has not really done a whole lot since. So it did go ahead and break down below this local support that had been holding and then has failed to get above it in these attempts to reclaim it back here earlier in the month. But really beyond that, not a whole lot's happened. So even though there's been this slight amount of volatility dropping below that support range, hasn't really been a lot of action with Bitcoin recently. And we can see this more clearly if we look at something like the Bollinger Band. So if you're not familiar with these, it's basically a moving average, and then you take two standard deviations above and below. Typically it's two standard deviations above and below, and that's what the Bollinger Bands are. And one of the things that can be useful about this indicator is it gives you a sense of how volatile the price has been over the recent point in time. So this is on the daily chart here. And so what you can see, if we look at just the width of the Bollinger Band, so that's what this indicator is here, you can actually just see, between the top end here and the bottom end here, how big of a difference is there between them? How wide is this gap essentially? And when you look at it that way, and you just zoom out to get more Bitcoin's history here, you'll notice that when you get really low readings, down close to where we were, earlier in this month, you'll see that those readings tend to come before big moves. So an example here would be back here in January of this year, we got really pinched down here, and then a big move came after. Got pinched over here, a big move came after. Same with over here. You can see a pinch happen here, and then a big capitulation happened. You can kind of go back and look and see that oftentimes before big expansions, you'll see these contractions. And that's normal market behavior. The markets will move in some direction. There's oftentimes some kind of a consolidation that happens, and then the next move happens, and some kind of consolidation, then the next move. And you can see that with volatility. That volatility really dies down oftentimes during those consolidations, and then you'll see that move happen after that consolidation has happened. And not only on the daily chart are we seeing volatility really compressed and pretty low, but if we also go and just look at the weekly chart, we can see a similar effect where really volatility is near all-time lows right here in terms of the Bollinger Band compression on the weekly chart, sitting all the way down here. And just as I was talking about before, if we look at the weekly, the last times we've been down at these levels have been before big expansions to the upside, then also big bear markets as well. Big capitulations can happen as well. And so all of this seems to suggest that a move might be coming for Bitcoin, some kind of a notable move to break us out of this relatively boring range we've been in. Now, obviously, with this kind of analysis, it's not telling us about direction. The Bollinger Band compression, or the width of the Bollinger Band, is just really telling us, has volatility kind of started to die out more recently, and could a bigger move be coming? We need to look at other data to give us an idea of where the direction might be. So something that I like to look at is our trend confidence indicator. So this is one of the models that we have on our website, polaritydigital.io. If you're interested in checking this out for yourself, link in the description. Those who sign up to our Polarity Digital Pro subscription service, only $15 a month, get access to this and all of our different models for all the different assets that we support. And what this model does is it basically tells us how confident should we be in a given trend. So if you're in an uptrend, how confident should you be of that? In a downtrend, how confident should you be of that, and vice versa. But one of the things that can be really useful about this model is to look at how it's trending, how it's behaving. So you'll notice that, for example, back here in January of this year, you see this notable downturn that we had, this downtrend in the TCI all the way through here till March. And then the second that really broke to the upside, look what happened to Bitcoin's price. Went crazy to the upside. Same thing over here. From March down through here in June, we were trending down on the TCI, and price was generally trending down as well. And then we saw this big breakout of that trend as well right here, right as we went and put in a major move. And you'll notice again, we're doing the exact same thing. TCI is trending down very notably, but importantly, we haven't seen any particular break of that. So as long as the TCI is trending down like this, I would expect a continuation of downward movement to keep going. But if we see a clear reversal like we did here on the TCI, that could be an early warning that the trend is changing. The momentum is shifting, and instead of this slow bleed out like we saw these 2 times in the past, if we see a breakout to the upside, that could be indicative of a clear move up to the upside. That could be, potentially the move that would take us up above the 31K range that we've been stuck in for a while, and maybe get us back up to some of these higher prices that people have been talking about for quite a while, move us up into the 30Ks. But vice versa, if we see this continue, or especially if we see a breakdown even further, so an acceleration of this drawdown here on the TCI, so a big cliff start to form, that might suggest that that big move might materialize in the opposite direction and really shoot us down to the downside. So that's one thing that I like to look at in the short term in terms of what is momentum doing. And basically the idea with this model is it's saying how confident should we be in this downtrend? Well, it's growing increasingly confident that we are in a downtrend. This uptrend we had been in is over, and we're now in a downtrend. But then a clear reversal of the upside would change that assessment. So that's something that I'm going to be watching going forward to see how this starts to play out. And again, those who go over and sign up for Player Digital Pro can watch this for themselves in real time. So that's something that from a model perspective that I'm going to be watching. There are also some factors I'm going to be looking for in broader markets that might give us an idea of where Bitcoin might be going. So one of the things that can be important to watch with Bitcoin and crypto generally is what is the dollar doing, the DXY. So that's the dollar's strength relative to a basket of other major currencies. And the reason that we care about the DXY when it comes to Bitcoin is that there tends to be an inverse correlation between them. When the DXY is moving down, Bitcoin often will be moving up. DXY down, Bitcoin up, DXY going up, Bitcoin down. And more recently, we saw this as well. We see when the DXY went crazy to the upside here, that was pretty much the bear market. And then when the second we reversed and started moving down, then Bitcoin started to move back to the upside. So more recently, the DXY has been continuing on a downtrend, but the momentum has been slowing. You'll notice that the severe drawdown, the speed, has been slowing down for the DXY here, really starting to round out. But now we're seeing potentially the dollar start to show some strength. So it lost its support here at around the 100 level back here in July, but now it has gone and reclaimed that level. So I think watching what the DXY does from here is going to be important. This is not just a short-term thing about where Bitcoin might break from here if we see a big move. This can also tell us about bigger, larger sweeping moves of where we might think things go. If the DXY starts putting in higher highs and higher lows, that might be a signal that we're starting to reverse out of this downtrend, and that could be putting some pain on risk assets. Would not be the best thing to see if you want to see crypto and Bitcoin start to rise. But if we put in a lower high here and start trending back to the downside, that'd be a good sign, be an indication that at least that part of macro environment is conducive to a risk asset like Bitcoin. And so similar to watching the DXY in this relation to risk assets, you also just look at other markets where there are risk assets trading, namely the stock market being the major place. And here, something that you'll note is, of course, the stock market has been going nuts ever since October of last year, and really has been just going up only almost, especially things like the NASDAQ riding the AI hype and all that has been going, ripping to the upside, getting close to all-time highs. So I think it's also going to be important to watch the stock market and see, does it fall over? So Bitcoin has not been enjoying this rally. Bitcoin has not been following this rally, at least in the recent history. Bitcoin has been petering out at around 30K, and in the meantime, the stock market has been ripping through that time. But it certainly could be the case that if we see the stock market fall down, that even though Bitcoin has not been enjoying the upward movement more recently, it still could get affected by the downward movement. If you suddenly see a big move to risk off in the stock market, people might start taking profits off of Bitcoin. People who bought back down through here might decide to get out now, take profits, and watch how things go, then maybe buy a dip later if you see the stock market start to move down, and that could affect backwards. And that's one of the things that can happen in markets, that you can have these correlations that break down to the upside, but then come back to the downside, or vice versa. Things can go the other way. But certainly if we see the stock market start to roll over in a major way here, I would tend to think that that's probably not a good sign for Bitcoin. And so to wrap up then, the way that I'm looking at Bitcoin currently is that things have been boring. I think most people feel very bored with Bitcoin. And really, it's not done a whole lot. Even this rally here is not broken up to new highs. So I think we're at a point where it could break either way. And there's going to be macro factors that might help us determine which way it might go. Then we can also just look at the data and see what it's telling us and see if we see a major change in momentum that might give us a sign. So I think it is likely that Bitcoin is going to make a move here. It's going to decide a direction soon, but which way it goes will probably depend on those other factors. And so you see people who are flipping ultra bearish here, saying Bitcoin's definitely going to keep falling down or might have to go and retest 20K. Some other people flipping major bullish and just saying, nope, Bitcoin's going up to 50K guaranteed. Currently, I'm taking a more data-driven perspective. I think we're at a point where in the short term, Bitcoin could really do anything. And so I think watching the data and tell us how it unfolds is going to make sense. But what I do think is probably a reasonable thing to expect is that this current contraction of volatility is probably going to break right like it did, here, like it did here, like it did here, like it did here, so on and so forth. The market can really only maintain this compressed volatility for so long before something major happens to push it one way or the other. And these are the factors that I'll be watching. All right, if you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us on Twitter. If you're interested in PolarityDigital.io and our Polarity Digital Pro subscription service, you can go check out our website, PolarityDigital.io, for more information about that.